Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the GC360 podcast recorded right here at the Garden City, New York Media Studios. I'm your host, Erica Becker, and I'm really excited about today's episode. That's probably why I just tripped up on my words because I'm so excited. I've been speaking with Sharon Grand off air, and she's going to tell us all about psychology. And specifically, we're going to talk about neurofeedback. But Sharon is the owner of her practice, Wavelength Psychology. So, Sharon, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm super excited to get into talking about this. And your office is really close to us.
About 2 blocks away.
Just found out. I didn't even know that. So, thank you again for coming on.
My pleasure.
I have so many questions, but I guess first off, how long have you been a psychologist?
So, first of all, thank you for having me, and
Yeah.
thank you for tripping up so I would be less nervous while we were starting.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. I've been a psychologist since 1997, so for
nice.
quite a long time, and we've had Wavelength since 2006.
Oh my gosh. So you've been doing it
Yeah.
a very long time.
Yeah, we've been in Garden City for the last 3 years. We started out in Massapequa, and we've been there for a long time, and we just expanded into Garden
Okay,
City.
cool.
Yeah.
So when did you, what made you start to get interested in psychology?
So I started when I was, everybody kind of goes through stuff. So when I was
Yeah.
a child, my parents went through a divorce, and my mother, who was probably ahead of her time at that time, got me into some sessions with a psychologist.
She definitely
and,
was ahead of her time.
Right?
Yeah, good for her.
and it was great. I really loved it. We would sit, we would have a little cup of coffee, we would talk about what was going on in my life, and it was really helpful. And then I sort of moved on with my life and forgot about it, and then was reintroduced to it again in college. And I
Okay.
think that it really connected back down for me and became something that I really began to love. So.
Awesome. Wow. So, did you start studying it in college then?
I did. Yeah.
Awesome.
I joined when I was an undergrad, it was called the Here to Help hotline. And so
Oh, wow.
I was part of a crisis hotline at Purchase College, and
Okay.
then went for my graduate school at Auburn University in Alabama, and then did a postdoctoral fellowship in neuropsychology and rehabilitation in Mount Sinai.
Oh, nice. Wow, Mount
Yeah,
Sinai.
and then I worked in non-for-profit at Mercy First for 9 years, and then preschools, and then ultimately went into my own private practice.
Okay. So do you primarily focus on a certain age group, or I know that psychology is such a broad, grand kind of title. There's a lot of specifics. So what is kind of your niche specific thing that
So
you focus on?
I actually really like working with neurodiversity. So I love working with ADHD, with high functioning autism, with working with oppositional defiant disorders, anything, and really working with a lot of people who maybe might sometimes feel like a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. But our practice really incorporates the whole concept of not just people being unique, but living in an environment. So we focus a lot on families. We work with a lot of children, teens, and adults, but we happen to do a lot of parenting, and we do a lot of work with couples, with people who are going through particular life situations, and sort of trying to find themselves in the environment that they're in.
Yeah. So do you think that that everybody should be going to therapy? Because that buzz is going around. I'm really glad that I think especially since COVID, people have really started to take mental health a lot more seriously. I never remember it being talked about so much as a younger child, but as I got a little older and became teenage into young adulthood, people start talking about it more. I'm glad. But now there's kind of a buzz going around that everyone should be in therapy. It's just like going to the regular doctor.
So I believe everyone should take their mental health seriously. Whether or not they should be in therapy is a little bit of a different question as what are they going to therapy for, right? So if someone is healthy and joyful and having a wonderful time in their life, do I think they need to be in therapy? I really don't. But I do think we all need connection. We all need support.
Yeah.
So that might come from therapy, but it might come from your family, from your friends, from your religious connections. It may come from sports or school. So we need connection. We need support. I think therapists sometimes I picture us a little bit more like Mary Poppins, right? Like we come in when there's a problem, and then we step out when things are well, and then if things start becoming difficult again, we take our umbrella.
Solution oriented.
Right, exactly.
Cool. So you told me that you're now certified in neurofeedback. So what is neurofeedback?
I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah, what is it? It sounds, I Googled it and looked at a couple things, but I need you to explain it to me because it looks like there's a lot involved.
Yeah, so in a sense, there's a lot involved, and in a sense, it's very, very simple. So part of what's happening, Erica, is there is such a mental health crisis happening throughout the United States. And even though I completely agree with you that we've done so much better in removing a lot of the stigma of getting help, the truth is that there's still a lot of self-blame for if I feel anxious, if I feel depressed, if I can't focus and pay attention. It feels very different than if I'm having a heart problem, right? Or if my kidneys aren't functioning, right?
Yeah.
If I'm doing that, I'm just having a medical issue. But if I'm anxious, I have to figure out a way to deal with it somehow, right?
That's very true.
But our brain is an organ, and it functions the same as all of our other organs. And when our brain is not feeling healthy and not engaging in activity that is regulated and working well together, we are not going to feel well. We are going to feel anxious, depressed, have difficulty focusing and concentrating. And so there are so many self-techniques that we can learn, coping techniques for anxiety, depression, ADHD, migraines, sleep, but it's not actually directly working with the biological function of the brain. Neurofeedback is amazing because it works with the biological function of the brain. So it's essentially brain training. That's what we're doing. So we utilize essentially movies, Netflix, YouTube, things like that, connected to a computer and an EEG lead to train our brain waves to work in a more positive, healthy way.
Wow. So you can train your brain waves like you can train a muscle, basically? Is that what you're saying?
It's exactly what happens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So I'm going to geek out on it for a moment and try to really explain and you let me know if I'm doing a good job.
No, I want you to geek out so hard on it. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to geek out right after these messages.
Sounds great.
My father never stops moving, but after he had a brain aneurysm, he had a difficult time getting back to his normal routine. That's when I called Alliance Services. They paired him with Rosa. She developed a custom home care plan that helped him with his recovery.
Rosa helped me gain my independence back.
Alliance Services, helping older adults continue to live well and independent.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the GC360 podcast. I'm Erica, and if you're just now joining us, my guest today is Sharon Grand. She's a psychologist, and she's certified in neurofeedback. So we're going to get right back into what is neurofeedback and how it works. I'm super excited to hear about this.
So thank you. So, our brain is composed of, of electrochemical neurons, right? So this is what's happening. And essentially we have 86 billion neurons in our brain that are firing electrical impulses and sort of working to create a symphony, right? It controls every single thing that we do. And every single time we learn something like what you're doing right now, we create new little branches, new little connections that create this learning, right? And that's called neuroplasticity. We're able to learn throughout our lifetimes and our brains are able to train. Do neurofeedback, what we do is what's called a QEEG brain map, where we do EEG, like you would do when you go to the doctor's office. Yeah. We look at your brain waves, and we compare them to a normative data sample. So we compare them to a very large group of other people who are your gender, your age, your handedness, and we take a look at where your brain looks like it's overactive, underactive, or functioning the way that it should. And if it's overactive or underactive in ways that are known to create certain symptoms, we can then work to regulate them. So let me see if I can give you an example.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So I have ADHD, right? So a lot of people with ADHD have slower brain waves in our frontal lobes, which impacts our ability to focus and pay attention. We have what's called theta waves, very slow waves in our frontal lobes, an overabundance of them, right? So I would watch a movie, and we would put a little EEG sensor here or here, and while I'm watching the movie, we would be the therapist would be reading the brain waves, right? And when the brain waves become too slow, too dysregulated, the movie will dim. And when the brain waves are appropriately active, the movie will brighten. So
Interesting.
our brain waves move so quickly that this can happen 1,200 times in a 22-minute period, for instance. And if I were to say to you right now, Erica, can you do me a favor? Can you just create more beta waves in your frontal lobes instead of creating theta waves? You'd be like, I don't really know how to do that, right?
Yeah.
But our brains know how to do it.
Okay.
So our brains are playing a little game. They're going like, this is interesting. I really want to watch this movie. But it keeps dimming. Wait a minute. When I hit that brainwave pattern, the movie brightens. Let me try that again. And again. And again.
So it makes you aware.
It makes your brain aware. Not you aware. Your brain will do it naturally. Your brain will learn to brighten the movie because it wants to watch the movie. And by doing that, when we do that over and over and over again, we begin to create new neural pathways. For instance, my little ADHD brain, when I think about a problem, my whole brain lights up, right? Wonderful, I'm creative, I can do all kinds of stuff, whatever, but I can't focus, right? But if I focus with my frontal lobes, I can actually think about something. So neurofeedback will teach me to direct my focal attention to my frontal lobes so that I can focus.
Oh my gosh.
It's really, really
That
cool.
is so cool. So do you only, what about, okay, you're talking about ADHD. This is an example from, I've experienced this and also some of my other fellow like creative artist friends. I, especially more as a kid, I would have trouble focusing on some things, but then on certain things, I'd be like hyper focused and a lot could be going on around me and I would notice nothing else but one thing.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So our attention and focus naturally will fluctuate, right?
Yeah.
So we have the attention that we give to things that are mildly interesting, the attention we give to things that are moderately interesting, and the attention that we give to things that are very, very, very interesting. So let's say somebody who's neurotypical with attention will give maybe a minute of something that's really mild or not really that interesting, and then they fall off. If it's moderately interesting, they might give even 15 to 20 minutes of attention, right? That's like if you think about a high school student learning about something in class, they can give it maybe 15 to 20 minutes of attention. And if it's very, 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 very interesting, they might work on it for an hour or two and really focus on it. Someone who might be a little bit more neurodiverse with attention might focus for a moment or two on something mildly interesting, moderately interesting, taking a dive. Very interesting. I will do this for 12 hours and do not interrupt me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I guess what it varies from person to person. What is mildly interesting? What is moderately?
Completely subjective.
Because some things I remember hyper focusing on. It's like it would be such a maybe mundane type of thing to someone else, but like to me, it was just I would hyper focus on just like one activity.
Which is an amazing gift to be able to have because it can really increase success. Right?
Yeah.
If you choose a career and a job that you love, you're going to be amazing at it because you have that interest and you can really hold your attention, which is great.
Yeah. So that's super interesting. Are there other ways that you can, like, you explained about the movie thing that you use. What other types of...
So there are games that people can play, but we mostly use the movies. And one of the things I really love about neurofeedback is it helps people to see what's happening in their brain. And that can really help to remove the stigma. So if we do a QEEG brain map and somebody is feeling anxious, I can show them, you have an overabundance of very active brain waves that are going on in your parietal lobes or in your temporal lobes, or you have dyslexia and you're having difficulty reading, and we're seeing a dysregulation in your left temporal lobe, and that's why you're having trouble reading. It's not because you're not trying hard enough. It's not because it's because there's a dysregulation here. And we can actually just put on a sensor. It's completely non-invasive. We can read your brain waves and we can give you feedback. We can give your brain feedback in real time, and your brain can practice regulating those brain waves. So I'll tell you a story and why I really, really love it.
Yeah.
So apples don't fall far from the trees, and I have permission to share this story, but my son has ADHD as well. And when he was little, I would tell him to clean his room, clean your room, clean your room. And of course, he really wasn't able to do it because it was that age where there were magic cards and Legos and all this stuff all over the room, and who can clean that? And he did 20 to 25 sessions of neurofeedback, and I optimistically said to him, please go clean your room. And he went, and he started cleaning his room systematically. It was incredible. Now, was he cured? No, he's not cured. Things are happening. But it's the improvement of the symptoms, and it's removing a lot of the energy that we have to use to cope with, deal with, and manage those symptoms, right? So when we're feeling anxiety, we spend a tremendous amount of time figuring out how to manage it, how to calm ourselves, how to breathe.
How can I still function today even though I'm super anxious? Yeah.
When we regulate brainwaves, we lessen the anxiety. And then it's natural and it's happening by itself, and we don't have to manage.
You don't have to try. That's awesome.
So it's amazing. Like, I look at it and I think, I was a psychologist for 15 years. I never saw anything that could impact ADHD that way. And Bessel van der Kolk, who's one of the really premier people for complex trauma, for people who've been through complex developmental trauma, has done a lot of this work for trauma work.
Okay. And I was going to ask you if you think that a lot of these problems, like with things like anxiety, even ADHD, like you said, apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but things like anxiety, do you think you're born with your brain that way, or do you think you can develop based on things that you've gone through, certain things like that?
So this is that neuroplasticity piece, right? So there's nature and nurture. We're not born tabula rasa. We're born with a lot of different characteristics. That being said, our environment impacts us tremendously, and there's no way to say that it doesn't. And that can be COVID, that could be our parents, it could be our school, it could be traumas that we've gone through. That our brain is neuroplastic. We learn. And the other thing that's really interesting is our brain prefers homeostasis. Our brain kind of likes to stay the same. So if we go through chronic periods where things are very stressful or where things are very anxiety provoking, we begin to learn to view the world that way, and it can become very hard to pull out of that pattern. So therapy, EMDR, neurofeedback, it's not just neurofeedback, but neurofeedback, therapy are one of those ways where we can actually actively and with intention teach ourselves, retrain our brain to begin to look at the world differently. It's glass half full, glass half empty, right? It's how we initially perceive that really impacts how we move through the world.
Yeah. That's super interesting because as you know, I'm very interested in people. Like, anytime I meet anyone, I'm super, like, I want to hear their story. And I always study people, like, wondering sometimes do you ever meet someone and you wonder, why are they like that? Why are they get mad so easily, or they get upset? So, like, why? And so it's interesting to hear you say this, that it's very, very likely something that happened, that they went through, even if they don't remember it, right? Can it be?
Absolutely.
Can it be like kind of...
Bessel van der Kolk, who I had just mentioned, wrote a wonderful book called The Body Keeps the Score. So it's so important to take into account that we maintain memory from essentially from the time that we're born. Pre-verbal experiences can absolutely impact us, and does. So yeah, things that can happen throughout our life can impact us, and things that that happen most immediately can impact us. And it impacts, where does it impact us? Well, our heart, our brain, our body. You were saying before, when you're feeling good, you can see the difference in your body, right? And our brain and our body are very, very highly connected. Our brain's an organ.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Wow. So who do you think, like, with neurofeedback, what do you think it's the most helpful for? Like, what does it help the most with? If you understand that might be a broad question.
Well, I think that there are several things. So neurofeedback can be a great form of therapy for maybe kids or teens or even adults who just don't do well with talk therapy, who don't like to come in and share their history, because guess what? It involves essentially no talking. We do an intake, obviously. We're responsible. We want to know about life history and all of that, which they can write. It doesn't have to be a conversation. But what we're really doing is that QEEG. We're really looking for dysregulation matched to symptoms. And so they can come in every week and sit in a recliner and watch a movie for a half an hour and begin to experience improvement. And we do neurofeedback with therapy for people who are interested, and therapists are providers for neurofeedback. So, it's one thing to, to get your brain regulated, but sometimes it's nice to have tips, tricks, techniques.
Yeah.
So, primary insomnia, right? Having difficulty sleeping, which is so important for everything else.
I used to have a big problem with that, and it affected so many things.
Affects your whole life, right? When we talk about brain care, we talk about you need to eat protein, you need to have oxygen, you need to have water, and you need to have sleep. That's what makes your brain function. And if you don't have those 4 things, it's not going to work. So it's really helpful for insomnia. It's really helpful for trauma, for ADHD, for anxiety, for depression, for migraines, for actually movement disorders, tic disorders. It can be very helpful for learning disabilities. So it can be really helpful for a wide range of things. And it can be it can be an alternative to therapy. Sometimes it can be an alternative to medication, depending on what's happening for the person. And it can also work along with. We can do therapy with neurofeedback. We can do medication with neurofeedback, as long as we are in, close contact and communication with whoever is providing the other services to make sure that we're, really staying in line.
Yeah. I'm sure it would be helpful to, if you're using neurofeedback, to kind of also, be paying attention to how it's working, like to tell someone, like, these were my symptoms 4 weeks ago, and now this is what's happening. So
yes, and we measure that every week. So every week, whoever's coming in gets a questionnaire. We talk about any symptoms. Neurofeedback's very non-invasive. There's very few side effects to it, unless you're really doing it inappropriately. If you're doing it with somebody who's not trained, who doesn't know what they're doing, then you can start to have symptoms like becoming irritable or becoming more anxious. But that's if somebody's not really monitoring.
How would that happen?
So let's say, for instance, I did not do a QEEG brain map, and I just came in and I assumed that because you have ADHD, you have slow brainwaves happening in your frontal lobe. So I start training your brainwaves, but I'm not monitoring them, so I'm not watching them to see if they're slow or fast or whatever's happening. So I'm trying to make them faster. But let's say it was never slow brainwaves. Let's say it was fast waves. You were having and now I'm trying to make them go faster. And so now you're starting to experience symptoms of irritability and agitation because we're overstimulating. So one of the things about neurofeedback is it trains the brain the way that working out at a gym trains your muscle. You're not going to have, it's not going to be like, your brain is trained and now you're different, right? This is what neuroplasticity is all about. It actually can take anywhere between 20 to 60 sessions before you get the full results that you want. You should be seeing results by about 10 to 15 sessions. You should be starting to see changes.
Just like a muscle,
Yeah, and you should be starting to see changes in the direction that you want. If after the sessions you're very sleepy or you find yourself becoming irritable, we're going to pull back the training. We're BCIA board certified. We're licensed mental health professionals. We are always going to be monitoring what's happening with your brain, and we're going to be showing it to you. We're going to be saying, here's your QEEG brain map. Let me explain all of this to you, show you what's happening. You can bring that to your doctors. You can, So it's a very, very gentle. We're not actually doing anything to your brain. You're doing it to yourself. The brain is doing it to yourself, right? Your brain is kind of going like, let me kind of regulate and go into a calm focus so that I can really watch that Disney movie. That would be fun.
That's so crazy. The brain is like super fascinating. It's an amazing organ.
It's an amazing organ. It is really incredible. And of course, the younger you are, the more neuroplasticity you have, right?
Makes sense.
Younger kids and teens, they tend to respond really powerfully to this.
Yeah.
Young adults do really amazing with it. As we get older, there's more sessions before we start to see those results. We'll see them, but it will happen more slowly in more sessions. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense because I remember learning things as a kid. You learn faster. Like, I started taking piano lessons when I was 8, and I picked it up like that, and I didn't do it for a long time. And now when I try to practice, I'm like, why? I improved so much when I was from 8 to 10. It was like amazing. And then now it takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
So that really goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah, our brains actually continue to grow pretty rapidly until we're about 25 years old.
Uh-huh.
And then we still grow, we still change, obviously, right? Or we wouldn't be able to learn anything. But it does happen at a slower rate. And I always say, like, you can see that immediately. Just try to teach a 3-year-old how to use the iPad and then try to teach a 60-year-old how to do it, right? There's your difference right there.
Yes, you're right. Oh, my gosh. So what is something, have you ever witnessed, what's like maybe the coolest or most crazy impact that you've seen this treatment on somebody? Like, have you seen it rapidly or like really crazily? The most, I don't know the word I'm trying to think of, the most like fascinating transformation.
So I'll tell you one about my friend because I feel like, it's a little bit, safer to talk that way. So it's really cool. So we were working with her with anxiety.
Okay.
And it was just, we could really see the anxiety on the brain waves and the high beta functioning that was happening.
I'm still that you can see it on the map. That's so cool.
So the interesting thing that happened was that she actually did her initial brain map, and then she went on a week-long silent retreat. And when she came back, we said, let's do something for fun and do your brain map again. So we did it, and she was completely regulated. We were like, oh my gosh, look at this. You're completely regulated, which was amazing. But then, of course, 2 or 3 weeks later, she was dysregulated because she wasn't on a silent retreat anymore, and then we were able to work with that.
And that's not a silent retreat. It's not necessarily for most people not a sustainable way.
But it was just really cool to see it. But,
wow.
I mean, we've had kids who have gone from feeling like they were terrible at math to actually, by the end of the year, being removed from special education. We've had kids removed from special educations for reading, for math.
Really?
Yeah, typically within about a year's time, where either because it was really an attentional disorder or because we're really working directly with the dyslexia and really move on. I've had kids that I've worked long enough, now, where they've moved into regular education and are now in college and are doing really beautifully.
That's amazing.
It's really an incredible thing. One of the things that neurofeedback can be really helpful with is mild traumatic brain injury. And when we say that, one of the things we don't think about are the invisible sort of after effects of concussion. Mm-hmm. So when we think about kids who are in sports, who are getting multiple sort of mild traumatic brain injury through concussion, and
people don't even know.
You're not even aware. It's not something you're going to pick up on an MRI, or it's just not something like that that's going to happen. But parents notice it, right? Parents are so instinctual, like they, obviously they know their children so well.
Yeah,
and they'll be like, I just feel like I'm noticing some word finding difficulties, or I'm noticing there's a mood switch, or there's whatever, and I just feel like they're not quite doing as well as they used to be doing. We can actually really take a look and see what's going on comparatively to where they should be.
Yeah.
And see if there's some brain training that we can do. So we've had some really interesting impact with mild traumatic brain injury where...
that's great.
Yeah,
wow.
We've helped, young adults typically are the ones who come in for us for that, but it can be really any age. Even we had one person who came in, it was a very, very, very old injury, who really was able to... reduce agitation, reduce anxiety, reduce some of that OCD stuff that comes with that, sometimes that mild traumatic brain injury, and really improve memory, attention, and concentration. And we've had people who've come in who've had really significant trauma. I mean, look at what we've been through in the last 20 years in our country.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, my gosh.
So we've come in and it's been really significant trauma, either, personal trauma or environmental trauma. Where they've really been able to talk about, I love EMDR for trauma, which is another form of therapy.
Okay.
There's a lot of great therapy for trauma, but it all involves talking. It all involves talking about what happened. Neurofeedback can either circumvent that or prep for that. I can't talk about it because when I talk about it, my fight or flight syndrome.
Yeah.
I'm just
Some
raised.
people,
I really can't do it.
Or they shut down or something. Yeah.
100% fight, flight, freeze, right? And so I just shut down. So neurofeedback, I had somebody describe it to me as like it takes some of the logs off the fire, right? It helps to that amygdala we can help the amygdala to feel calmer, more regulated, and to really be able to get to a place where they can either engage in other treatment or just where they're not continuing to have so many flashbacks and nightmares and things that are really interfering.
Which, like you said, if anyone living in the last 20 years, I mean, there's been a number of things that we all have experienced this similar, with 9/11 to COVID to everything. So that's pretty incredible that you can just, in a more medical, it feels like it's like a little bit more of like a set way. Like if you do this regularly, it will work.
It will, which is so phenomenal. And can I say to you, it will work 100% for everyone. Nothing works 100% for everybody, But for the vast majority of people who engage in it and do it regularly and engage in brain care, it will work. And we actually just started doing remote systems too, so we can help people. We can give them a system that they can use at home, and we monitor it from the office. So it's really cool. So it can be, it can be really nice that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the great things about neurofeedback is, we're always looking to reduce symptoms, right? Let's reduce anxiety. Let's reduce depression. Let's reduce, but I think that therapy, and I think that you were actually just saying something about this before, but therapy is really about increasing joy, right? Like we can't just reduce symptoms. We have to find a way to go through our life if we want to live our best life that's joyful, right? I feel like it's a little bit like ambiance zebra, right? Like we don't want to stop at Z at reducing symptoms. And so one of the things I love about neurofeedback is it gives us the opportunity to let go of working so hard to manage those symptoms and to just live our life and begin to re-experience who we can be and how joyful we can be and what we can do.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because I think I've realized that's the kind of the key to life, because things are going to happen. Outside things are going to happen to us. We can't help that.
Right.
All we have control over is how we respond, how we move. So that's really the best, like you said, not just reducing, but finding a way to still be joyful no matter what's happening.
And I think one of the things that you said was so important, Erica, is like all we can do is control how we react. And I think where neurofeedback comes in and is so great is when we can't control it. When we know, I shouldn't be feeling this anxious. I shouldn't be feeling this depressed. I should be able to focus better. But I can't. What's wrong with me? And I say, but you have a brain, and it's an organ, and it may not be functioning correctly. So let's work on it. And you're when we've been walking around having all these like sort of negative thoughts, and I mean, I know COVID is over, but it's sort of not, right? Because
we're all impacted by it. None of us will ever be the same. Yeah.
But also we have to look at the impact of social media. We have to look at the impact of school pressures. Like we don't have to have giant traumas to start engaging in negative self-talk.
Definitely.
And to start,
You're right.
being hard on ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right?
I'm glad you said that.
When we do that consistently, our brain moves into a new state of homeostasis where it says, well, the world actually stinks and nothing's really going to make it better. And no matter how hard you try, I'm still going to make you worry at night, right? That's simple, in a sense, simple overactivity in our brain. It's just agitated.
Yeah.
And if we can work to just do calm relaxation, not breathing and heart rate is great, but we're talking about brain waves, we can actually move the brain into a new homeostasis. So if you think about it with weight, which is my easiest analogy, right? If I eat unhealthy for 3 or 4 years or 2 years or whatever, and I don't exercise and I gain 10 or 15 pounds, that weight is hard to lose, right? My metabolism has moved into a new state of a new homeostasis. This is my comfortable weight now. And if I eat a lot or a little, I'm kind of going to stay around the same. But if I exercise regularly and I eat a little bit differently, I will actually change my metabolism. My body will go into a new set weight, and that will become my new homeostasis. And once I'm there, I won't have to work so intensely to remain there.
Yeah.
I just kind of, it becomes my new state of being.
That's a good analogy. I think a lot of people could relate to that. That's a really good way to put it. Wow. I'm so glad that you've brought this to my attention. I'm glad you're on the podcast so that more people will know about this, because I had never heard of this. And I wish I would have known about this as a kid. Like, so this is so amazing. This is a game changer.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have known about it as a kid because we didn't have access to it.
Right.
This involves really complex computer technology. This involves a gaming computer, not a regular computer, right?
Yeah.
It involves portable EEG equipment. It's really cutting edge work, and it's only been around for the last 20 to 25 years, and it's becoming more and more sophisticated over time.
Well, it's super, super exciting. I'll definitely have to stay up to date on it because it's fascinating. Sharon, I could talk to you probably all day about this, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of this information with me and with our viewers, because it's really, really special stuff. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Of course, of course. So if people want to find you, let's say maybe someone now wants to explore doing this, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can go to our website, wavelengthpsychology.com.
Okay.
Or you can give us a call, 1-800-871-5491.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, Sharon, for being on the show. This is another great episode of the GC360 podcast. I'm Erica Becker, and we will see you next time. Season's greetings, everyone. Erica Becker here, your host at Garden City, New York Media. I am very excited to announce that I'll be providing acting classes for young people in Garden City in 2023. To stay updated and for more information, visit our website at longislandacting.com. Thanks so much, and happy holidays.